Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I am so excited to be here with you today. I know I say that every morning, but it's true every morning. Today may be a little bit especially true, though, because today we have so much to cover, and it's really a fun episode, I believe, because it's all about the actual practices that you can do to develop these 3 levels of happiness that we've been talking about the last 3 days. And so I'm really excited for this. So let's just jump in because I think it's a lot to cover. It feels like a lot to cover. So let's make sure that we get enough time. If we have a little extra time at the end, if my timer says that time allows, I'll make a couple of announcements. Otherwise, we'll just barrel right in. All right. So remember, there's the 3 different levels of happiness, right? The first level being just simply feeling more positive emotions than negative emotions, right? So for that level of happiness, there's a couple of very simple exercises that you can do starting today to develop that first level. And again, many of us feel that first level at least at some times, but remember, it's a fickle and sort of unstable, unsustainable level of happiness because it is so reliant upon our moment to moment emotions, which are so heavily impacted by our experiences that we're going through, right? The flat tire, the traffic jam, the coffee house that messed up your order, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so one of the challenges with this first level of happiness is something called the negativity bias, which I talk about here a lot. And so you probably have heard of this before, which is, again, associated but not exactly the same as the automatic negative thoughts that we talked about last week. Remember those ants that are crawling around our brains, right? And so so the thing about the negativity bias, right, and to a lesser degree the ants, is that it's our brains are conditioned and wired, more wired than conditioned, conditioned evolutionarily, right? Like not conditioned by your own life, but through the spectrum of human evolution, right? Is what I mean by as it's evolved. Anyway, however, your own life can either increase the negativity bias or decrease the negativity bias depending on your upbringing. That's a whole different subject for a different day. Pardon me for digressing. So the negativity bias, though, what it's doing, and it's there to help us, right? And it's noticing more of the negative aspects of our experience than it is the positive aspects. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that we are having more negative experiences than positive experiences. It simply means that we're more likely to notice them. Right? So in other words, you walk through a beautiful botanical garden, right? And you're having a lovely day. You're holding the hand of someone you love and you're experiencing all this beauty, right? You go out, you leave the botanic garden and then you see somebody have a fist fight, right? You're going to remember the fist fight a lot more than you're going to remember that beautiful time in the garden, right? That's how the negativity bias works. And so what our challenge then because remember, that first level of happiness is about experiencing more positive emotions than negative emotions, right? So our challenge is to notice more of the things in our lives that are positive, that are going to make us feel a positive emotion like happiness, right? And so one really effective and super easy way to do that is by keeping a gratitude journal. Gratitude journal is so simple and so easy to do. It's like it's almost like, why would you not do it? All right. So what's involved pardon me, what's involved in a gratitude journal is a simple act of sitting down. I recommend doing it at least at night, like right before you go to bed, because it's actually also going to impact the quality of your sleep. But at least right before bed. If not, do it in the morning and the evening, right? But as close to bedtime as you can, take a notebook. And I recommend getting like a dedicated notebook for this. It's kind of nice to have this special thing, but maybe that's me. Not required, but maybe a good idea to get a dedicated sort of notebook that feels a little special, right? So you get this notebook, you write down 5 things for which you are grateful. That's it. That's the whole practice. There's just one rule. Okay, and then I have a couple of tips for you. The one rule is that you can't repeat something from day to day. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go through every journal entry you've ever made and make sure you don't say this other thing, the next time. But the idea is to come up with new things every day if you can, right? I mean, again, not doesn't mean that you can't repeat something a few weeks later, but don't repeat the same thing from day to day is basically the thing, or within the same, memory. Like don't say, oh yeah, I still have my kids that I can say I'm grateful for. Because the idea here is that the sort of, in the first week or so, you're gonna use what I like to call the low hanging, beautiful fruit of our lives, right? So we're all grateful for certain things, right? We're grateful for our, if we have good health, we're grateful for that. If we have a little money in the bank, we're grateful for that. If we have a healthy family, we're grateful for that. A house over our head, all that stuff, right? And so those are sort of the low-hanging fruit. And those are the first ones that you're going to go to, which is beautiful, right? But after that, right, it's going to become a little bit, you're going to have to look a little harder. You're going to have to dig a little deeper, right? And so that's where the magic of this practice starts to happen, you see, because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to notice more of the positive aspects of our lives than the negative aspects of our lives. So what's going to happen is throughout your day, you're going to know that you're accountable to your gratitude journal, right? You know that you're going to have to make an entry later on, right? And so what's going to happen, and it happens even subconsciously, it's not even something necessarily that you're thinking about, but it's going to start happening that you start looking for things that you can put into your gratitude journal at night. Okay, so that is going to make you start seeing the things that make you happy. All right. One little tip that I want to give you, okay, is that a lot of times when people start on a gratitude journal, especially by what I just said, right in the beginning, you're going to say the kind of important, obvious things in your life, right, like your family, your health, your financial stability, if you have that, whatever it is, right, that you're going to like pick these big things, right, but gratitude, like life, right? Gratitude happens in little tiny moments, right? It could be a cup of tea that was just right, just the perfect temperature, perfect steep. It was delicious, right? It could be a smile that you shared with somebody on your morning commute, a stranger where you met eyes and you smiled, you said good morning, and it just felt good, right? It could be, something as simple as waking up and not having a toothache, right? It could be the relief of a toothache or a backache or something like that. It could be, hitting all the green lights on the way to work this morning, whatever it is, little things, right? And this, it's almost like the smaller the better, right? Because you want to, remember these emotions happen, emotions literally happen in 90-second increments, right? So we're talking about very, very small things. So the more little things that you can, pay attention to that make you happy, that's the way this first level of happiness works, right? So you're going to develop this, a sense of, you're going to develop a pattern and a habit of seeing the little things that are just going to be little drops of little deposits in your piggy bank of happiness, right? So the smaller the better. All right. Next practice is a simple compassion practice, okay? And this one's really kind of fun, and I love this one. And some people really love it, and some people are like, it's all right, But see how you like it, okay? And this is just one of many, many ways you can practice compassion, right? But this is a really cool one, okay? What I ask you to do or invite you to do as in this practice is to set a timer to go off. Say, if you want to do it every hour, right? Like that's really cool. If you could do it 8 hours a day, just while you're working or outside of work or what have you, once an hour is like that. That's that's the paradigm, right? But if you want to just start out doing it, 4 times, 5 times a day, set a timer to go off as many times as it feels comfortable for you. And when the timer goes off, what you're going to do is very, very simple. You're going to just put down whatever you're doing or just pause, right? If you're standing online at Starbucks, right? Or you're driving your car, or you're walking down the street, or you're at work, whatever. when the timer goes off, you just pause whatever you're doing for just 10 seconds. Okay, that's all this is 10 seconds. And during those 10 seconds, you don't have to time it, give or take, during those 10 seconds, look around you, and every person you see, okay, strangers and friends and coworkers alike, every person you see, you don't have to make eye contact. Looking at the back of their head is fine. Looking at the side of their face is fine. Looking at them from way across a supermarket is fine too. This is not a connection exercise. This is a compassion exercise. So what you do is look around for those 10 seconds, and every person you see in those 10 seconds, just look at them and silently in your mind, you don't have to say it out loud because that could get weird. Silently in your mind, just say, I wish you well, or I hope you're happy, or I hope that there's nothing causing you to suffer right now. Whatever those terms are, it doesn't really matter. But you want it to be something that's kind and compassionate, right? Something that is an investment from your heart into the well-being of others. Okay, do this every day, and I promise you, within like 3 weeks or so, you're gonna have an automatic. There's been people who've done this for as little as like 4 days and said that it changed everything for them, right? But over the course of a few weeks, you're gonna start developing a mental habit, and that mental habit is going to be feeling compassion for every person you see. Now, compassion is known to be very much so. When you feel compassion, the areas of your brain that light up are the same areas that light up in happiness. So it is equivalent to happiness on many levels, right? And so this is a great practice too. Okay, so that's how you get to that first level of happiness, right? Just feeling more positive emotions than negative emotions. Okay, feeling the love that is associated with compassion, feeling the happiness that is, or feeling the gratitude that's involved, or the happiness that's involved with gratitude, right? Okay, so now we get into that second level of happiness, right? Now, this second level of happiness, remember, is about kind of feeling that we are grounded in the world, and that we are on pace for being who we want to be, right? Like whether that's, being a kinder person, whether it's being, if money is your thing, then money is your thing. I'm not telling you can't be, you can't be focused on making a lot of money. If that's what you want to do, then fine, right? Just remember that your happiness is not in the money itself, right? Your happiness is whether you are on pace for that goal of a lot of money, right? And again, it's not so much that okay, I set a goal when I'm 20 years old that I'm going to make $1 million by the time I'm 25, right? It's not like you're only happy if you do make that goal, right? So the idea is, between 20 and 25, if you're not on pace with that goal, it becomes resetting the goals, right? So now in this case, a lot of benefit is going to come from just a basic journaling exercise. Okay. And what I invite you to do, well, actually, there's two different journaling exercises I'm going to share with you. Okay. So the first one is just a very basic journaling exercise. Set up some prompts. Okay, so in this case, the prompts would be, you might look at, am I, my goals are ... and just write for set a timer. Okay, I'm sorry. If you want you can call me for more details and help with these. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going through them quickly. But I invite you to call me if any of these resonate with you and you're like, tell me more about that journaling practice. Just call me, okay? Just set up a call. We'll go over it. And I won't charge you a thing, I promise. But the so my goals are ... Now you're gonna set a timer for 3 minutes, okay? During those 3 minutes, literally, it's pen to the paper for the entire 3 minutes. If you run out of something to write, just write, I can't think of what else to write, okay? Just keep writing. The idea is that you don't want to sit here and think about it. You want to let it just flow out of you. Okay, and that's an important aspect to this practice. Okay, so my goals are ... What is important to me ... you can play around with it, right? But the idea is to discover, where you're at, because a lot of this depends on just stopping and looking at what's happening, right? So often, we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day grind that we don't take the time to take this long view of what's happening in our lives to see, like, okay, where am I here? And so journaling in this way is going to really help you to cultivate this understanding. Now, the other way that I'm going to suggest to journaling, and this is a practice that came from a dear friend of mine, really beautiful practice. Okay, this is really worth doing. And I like to do this every, few months, really, it's a great just sort of check in with yourself. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to write down and take a piece of paper, like a big, even a legal pad would be great, right? And space out 5 different things that have happened in your life, right? And it doesn't matter which things you can do. And that's the beauty about doing this every few months. You pick different sections of your life, kind of, right? But what you want to do is take like the 5 big things, right? So I went to college in these years, and then I got this job, and then I got this job, and then I got married, and then I had a kid, that kind of stuff, right? Like the big things, right? And write down those big things as like separate, like give yourself lots of space in between. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, connect those different experiences with writing. Okay, so kind of, so you take like, again, I graduated school or I was in college between, 1987, 1991. That's for me, right? I was in college during those years and I got, this big job in 1996, right? Whatever it is, right? So connect those 2 dots. What happened in your life between those 2 times? Right? And then, between the time you got your big job and you met the person who was going to be your wife, what happened in those times? Between the time you met the person who's going to be your wife or husband and the time you got married, what happened in that time, right? And just kind of connect the dots. This is going to give you a grounding and an understanding of where you've been and how you've gotten to where you are right now. The more you understand how you've gotten to here, the more you're going to understand how the future looks, right? Now, another great practice in this particular area, and this kind of also applies to the 3rd level too, so this will be like kind of a segue, a kind of transition practice, is an envisioning practice, right? And so, we're going to count this as the 3rd step, because this is really kind of about finding purpose in your life too, right? But you can write a journal that says, there's a couple of different ways that I've heard of this done, right? So one way, for the more macabre of us out there, is to write your own obituary. But you're going to write 2 different versions of your own obituary, okay? You're going to write one version that says, if everything in my life it maintains the exact trajectory that it is, what is my, what would I write in my obituary, right? If everything stays exactly the same, right? And I just kind of, I have this job, I retire, I do the, everything is like the way that I think it's going to happen. What's at the end, right? Like write that, right? Write the obituary based on that. Now write a version that if you could do anything you wanted, what would that obituary look like? Now, what happens is, this is a practice I learned from the folks over at Search Inside Yourself. And the person who originally did this, right, found that first version was like painstaking. Like she couldn't even finish it, right? It was so hard for her to write that first version of like what was going to happen in her life, right? But the second version, she found so much energy she could barely stop writing. Right. And so this is going to give you a sense of what your passions really are, right? What your life's purpose really is, right? But it's also going to give you a sense, again, it's kind of a transition between the 2nd level and the 3rd level, because in addition to finding that purpose, which is that 3rd level of happiness, it's also going to allow you to see where you're at in your life, in vis-a-vis your goals, right? Not, we talked about the past in that first exercise, right? But now we're going to look at the future a little bit, right? Including the past, right? So it's a really great exercise to do. Okay, now again, you could do it as writing two versions of your obituary, but there's also another way to do it that's less, maybe again, less macabre for everyone. But the second way to do it, and this is also from the folks over at Google Search Inside Yourself, is to imagine that you're walking into a crowded, auditorium of some sort, right? Like a convention center meeting place or whatever. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people who are just, really enwrapped in watching this speaker and listening to somebody who's speaking to them from the stage, right? As you walk into that room, the speaker is you in 20 years from now. Okay? What is it that you're saying? What's inspiring that you're saying? What could you be saying that's inspiring all these people in such a way? Right? Now it's not about figuring out why they're inspired. It's about saying what you believe. Like, if you were in front of a room full of people, what would you say? That is going to be a big key to your sense of purpose and your sense of meaning, right? Whatever comes out of that is going to, is going to key you in on what your life's purpose is. Okay? So now getting into that third level, okay, there's another really important practice you can do. There's two more that I want to tell you about. We're right on time here. This has been challenging because, as you know, I don't script these things out. So I'm pretty proud of myself with the time pacing here. So the next practice, right, is to sit down. This could be a journaling practice too, more of like a free form journaling practice, if you will. It could also just be like a list, right? Or it could also just be sitting and contemplating. I do recommend always writing down when you just sit and think things through, because the thoughts, as you know, right, the thoughts come and go very quickly, and it's hard to remember everything. So writing things down, even using a voice recorder, is fine. I mean, journaling is journaling. Journaling does require writing. So in those other journaling exercises I told you, write those by hand. But if you're just trying to kind of do this next exercise, you could do it with a voice recorder if you really didn't want to write it. But the idea is to connect your current job, whatever it is you do. I promise, if you give me 5 minutes, I can find for you a sense of purpose that you can connect to through your job. And I did it even in my old advertising days. Okay, I mean, I did it retrospectively. I didn't know it back then. I might still be in advertising if I knew this back then, right? But back in advertising, I mean, I was promoting cigarettes. I mean, it was terrible. And back in the early 2000s, after in the United States, we weren't allowed to advertise outdoors and big billboards and stuff like that with cigarettes anymore. So what what the cigarette companies were doing was they were going to Eastern Europe, where there were no no laws yet, right? And they were spending just as much money to try to get people addicted to cigarettes there, right? So it was a really negative thing for me to be working on that stuff, right? But the thing is that the company that I worked for also, in some sort of indulgence way to clean their soul, I guess, but they also were always, every single major ad agency has a lot of charity accounts, right? Or at least a handful of charity accounts, right? Where they do pro bono work to assist a charity, right? And so when I worked for one agency, it was the Michael J. Fox Foundation, right? And I had no idea later on, but later on, that my mother would get Parkinson's disease. So it's definitely something that's very close to home for me right now, looking back, right? But at that time, right, I worked on that. Right? But even if I didn't personally work on Michael J. Fox, what I can tell myself is that because I come to work every day and because the work I do makes this agency profitable money, that profitable money is what enables us to work towards finding a cure for Parkinson's disease. That's a major thing. right? You remember I told you about the guy at Cape Canaveral, right? Who John F. Kennedy, walks up to the janitor who walks through the room as he's touring as JFK was touring the facility. He says, "Hey, I'm Jack Kennedy. What's your name? What do you do here?" Guy didn't say, "I'm just the janitor." He didn't say, I just sweep the floors. Don't mind me. You don't need to talk to me. I'm not a scientist." No, what the guy said is, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Because it's true, right? Because by emptying the waste baskets, by cleaning, by facilitating an environment in which the scientists can work, that man did have a lot to do with putting a man on the moon. And so whatever it is that you do for a living, right? Like my wife manages a grocery store, right? But you know what? In times of during this whole pandemic and even just in regular times, what my wife is there doing is she is helping people to eat. I mean, that's true, right? Like when people come in, and it's also, vitamins and all kinds of other stuff, but she can attach to that, right? She can say that because she comes to work every day and because she manages all these people and makes sure that this place runs well, she is absolutely involved with people feeding their families. I know it may feel like a stretch, but it's true. Something else that her company does, and this is again where you can always like kind of find the charity. Her company also, like when you use your own bag, right? Their company donates 5 cents for every time somebody comes in with a bag, donates 5 cents to the local food banks, right? And so so that's a big deal. I mean, it's something like I think somebody said it's millions of dollars a year, or hundreds of thousands at least, right? Chain wide, So there's so many different ways you can do this, right? You can identify something that is good about what you're doing. Right. And again, the key is not just good. I don't mean to say, just do something good. That's not what I meant to say. I'm sorry. But what I meant to say is that it's something bigger than yourself. And something bigger than just coming to work for the for the the paycheck, right? So in other words, if John F. Kennedy came to my wife's store and said, "Oh, hi, what do you do here?" She could say either, "Well, I just manage this store for X amount of dollars per hour," or she could say, "I'm helping to fund the local food banks." And that local food bank, serves, hundreds of thousands of people every year and prevents people from starving. Thanks for asking. Right? And if you remind yourself of that in the morning and you kind of set the intention to be aware of that, that is a way in which you are going to deepen yourself into that third and just unwavering, totally sustainable level of happiness. Right now, one more, right? And this is again about envisioning a little bit, but not, well, it's, envisioning is very, very helpful. Okay, so actually two more. Let's do a little envisioning practice. And this is something you can do as a journaling practice. You could just do it as a thought thing. You could write it down, whatever it takes, right? But envisioning a future, right, is really, really helpful. Okay, so, and this again kind of goes back to the obituary or the speaking at the thing, right? You can envision yourself creating the positive impact on the world around you, right? So envision the fact that that by again, and it's not just the charity, right? You can also look at where does your company buy their fruit from, and they're like in a grocery store, right? It happens to be that my wife's company, it's a great company, but that could also mean the choice, right? Like that. I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of wavering around here, but you could also, like, and this is part of the envisioning though, right? You envision yourself working for a company that has a strong level of social impact, right? And the more you envision that, the more likely it's going to happen. That deals with the way the brain works, right? The brain, it only knows what you tell it, right? Or what it's lived through, right? So if you imagine a situation, right? What you're doing is you're giving your brain something to shoot for in a way, right? And it can predict a positive outcome based on what you're telling it, right? And so tell yourself, I'm going to find a company that's really, very charitable that I'm going to work for. It has strong social impact, right? The more you do that, the more likely it's going to come true. Okay. And so there was one more that I wanted to tell you about, which is to talk about it a lot. Okay. And I mean a lot, right? Like, if you're, whether you're journaling about it, which is a form of talking, talking to your book basically, but also talk to your loved ones, talk to your spouse, bring it up, right? Remind yourself all the time, right, what you're doing and how you're impacting the world around you, right? And again, it doesn't even have to be something with your job, right? Remember what I said yesterday, right? You are impacting the world around you just by smiling every day. Right? Just by smiling at people. I'm going to share with you a story from Thich Nhat Hanh as we close here. It's going a little bit long, but one more little story, right? That will tell you about how the smile can impact the world around you, okay? Thich Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese monk who was, very active during the Vietnam War, right? And during the Vietnam War, there was what he calls boat people, right? Where people would, just load on, like way overload these boats, right? That would sail across the Gulf to Thailand, right, where they could be safe, right? There wasn't a war in Thailand, so they could escape the violence, right? So you're talking about way overloaded boats, like, just hundreds and hundreds of people on these little boats, right? And a lot of times out in the open sea, the boats would capsize and people would drown, right? And so what Thich Nhat Hanh says, though, is that if one person, just one person on the boat was to remain calm and confident and stable, then what happens is the other people on the boat start looking at that person and say, wait a second, that person's not worried, so maybe I don't need to be worried either. Maybe I can just sit still and we can distribute the weight properly. Maybe we can all survive this if we all stay calm, right? And that's his metaphor, right? Now, what he says, though, or the new metaphor that he uses, is that the earth is like one of these little boats, just drifting around in the cosmic sea, is how he poetically puts it, right? And so the idea here is that we're all walking around on this earth. A lot of us are scared. A lot of us are when Thich Nhat Hanh talked about this in the mid-70s, he's talking about like nuclear proliferation, right? There's enough bombs on this earth to blow up the earth like a few times over, right? And so it's a scary place we live in sometimes. If we allow the fear to get in, there's plenty of evidence around us in the world that will enforce that fear, right? And so if you walk around all day, every day, with a smile on your face, right? That smile is that same thing as somebody sitting on one of those boats and remaining calm, right? If you're smiling and people see your smile, they get a feeling of safety. They get a feeling of happiness. They get a feeling of reassurance. Right. And so for you and you can make this an intentional practice, right? I used to, when I had a co-working office, it was about a half hour every morning. I had to ride my bike to school, to work, to school. I had to ride my bike to work every morning. And here in Denver, there's bike trails. So there's, it's like a 2-lane thing. So I'm passing people all the time. And I would just have a big smile on my face, right? And I would watch, and every like third person, like just as they're getting to this point in my periphery, I would see their face light up and smile, right? And what I know, though, is I know that now they're going to be smiling when they pass the next person coming this way. And then that person might smile. And then the next person coming this way, that person might smile. And now what we got going is we got this whole smile train going, right? And everybody, and you don't know why, right? But you get to the office and you're feeling like, what a beautiful morning, right? You don't know why, but you feel it. And that's happiness. That's that feeling. All right, folks. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find these suggestions helpful. If you have any questions at all, please, anything, please do not hesitate to reach out either via email, or I'll put the link in the description, as I always do, to book a call with me. A lot of you are responding and booking these calls, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. So keep it up. But yeah, if you have any questions about this, and if you feel like you want some coaching around this, as you know, I am a happiness coach. And so I am more than happy to talk to you about what that looks like. Many different options, some group options. I have some one-on-one options. Totally happy to talk to you about that. And and yeah, and so let me know if you want to talk about that, okay, or anything else. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Long episode today. I appreciate you. I'll be back again on Monday. I wish you all well. Bye bye.